So next we'll talk about these definitions. And remember you had this drawing of this triangle. And R was labeled as the hypotenuse. And then you had the X and you had the Y as the legs. And they can be labeled as either one. And we're going to look at just this angle right here, and we're going to label it as theta. So just a Greek letter, and we use that lots of times in math. So the definition of sine of that angle theta is the ratio of the side opposite over the hypotenuse. And I'm going to do it like this, side opposite, I'm going to call it SO over hypotenuse. And then in your book, it labels it as X over R because those are the parts of the triangle. Cosine theta's definition is the side adjacent, the side beside the angle. So here's your angle. This is the side beside it, not the one opposite, but the side beside it over the hypotenuse. So I'm going to call that side adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tangent is side opposite, so opposite over adjacent, which would be X over Y. So side opposite over side adjacent. And a mnemonic that might help you remember that, we're going to call opposite O, adjacent A, opposite O, adjacent A. So one mnemonic that helps me remember that is if I do this. Okay. Some people just remember this as a word, SOHCAHTOA, and so that would be side. Sine is opposite, and it's always over hypotenuse. So, and sometimes we put it in here like this. Put the H in there, so that it's SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. The other thing that helps me sometimes, instead of thinking of it as a word, is to think of it as a sentence. And I say, some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. And that helps me remember the definitions. If I can just write those letters down, I can remember that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now, as for the reciprocals, remember that cosecant goes with sine, and reciprocal means turn it upside down. So if sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosecant would be hypotenuse over opposite, or R over X, like your book does. The reciprocal of cosine is secant, and if I turn that upside down, I would have hypotenuse over adjacent, or I would have R over Y. And then for tangent, if I flip that upside down, that's cotangent, and it would be Y over X, or it would be adjacent over opposite. So what I tell students to do is just remember the first three, and then if I need the reciprocal, I can always just turn them upside down. So you need to know that for the parts of the triangle, the sine is the opposite over hypotenuse, the cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Sine, opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent, opposite over adjacent.